Hi, I'm Ben McSheffrey, and I'm the Technical Training Manager for Symmons Industries. Today, I'm here to talk about an easy and low-cost way to keep your Symmons Temtrol valve performing like new. It all comes down to periodic preventative maintenance. Let's say the temperature aspect of your valve is working fine, but maybe you have a slow drip. It's likely you don't need a new spindle. Sometimes you just need a fresh set of washers. The washers for Temtrol valves are made from the highest quality rubber to last for years, but conditions like hard water, debris, and thousands of cycles can take their toll. Like everything else about the Temtrol, these washers are easy to replace, and the job only takes a few minutes with common hand tools. Just make sure to use only genuine Symmons parts to avoid damaging the valve or voiding the warranty. Now, let's take a look at what we'll need to change out those washers. A genuine Symmons TA-9 washer kit, a genuine Symmons T-16 washer kit, a 15/16 open-end wrench or large adjustable wrench, a small adjustable wrench, a pair of Plumber's slip joint pliers, an Allen wrench set, a Phillips-head screwdriver, and if your valve has integral stops, you'll need a large flathead screwdriver. Before we get started, there are two very important steps we must follow before disassembling a Temtrol valve. The first step is pretty logical. Turn off the hot and cold water supply lines to the valve. If your Temtrol valve has integral stops, like this, you can shut off the water right at the valve. Just use a large flathead screwdriver and turn each stop in the clockwise direction until it seats. The second step is to open the valve to make sure the water is turned off completely and to release any residual water pressure. But more importantly, you must turn the valve to the fully open position before you begin to disassemble the valve. If you try to disassemble the valve while it's in the closed position, you'll likely do irreversible damage to the valve. Now that the water is off and the valve is fully open, let's remove that old TA-10 spindle. One of the nice features of the Temtrol is that you can repair the valve right from the front. Depending on the trim design, some valves can be repaired just by removing the handle and the dome cover. If your valve has integral stops, you'll need to remove the escutcheon to access them. And some decorative trim designs may limit your access to the cap assembly and spindle, so you may have to remove the escutcheon in that case as well. With the water off and the valve in the open position, we'll remove the handle first. If you have a newer Temtrol trim, the handle is held onto the spindle with a set screw. The Allen wrench size for that screw will either be 1/8 inch or 3/32 inch, depending on the handle style. If you have an older Symmons valve, the handle may be attached by a Phillips-head screw that's under the decorative button. After removing the handle, unscrew the dome cover by turning it counterclockwise. On some older valve designs, the dome cover is held on by a decorative nut. Now the T12A cap assembly and the end of the TA-10 spindle should be visible. Set the handle and the dome cover aside in a safe place, but we'll need the handle in a few minutes, so keep it close by. Now we're ready to remove the cap assembly and the TA-10 spindle, and that's where the 15/16 wrench, or the large adjustable wrench, comes in. Using the wrench flats, loosen the cap assembly from the valve by turning it in a counterclockwise direction. It may take a little bit of force to loosen, especially if you have hard water or if the valve hasn't been serviced in a long time. When it's loose, spin the entire assembly out of the valve. It should spin out easily. If there's any resistance, stop and make sure the valve is in the fully open position. You should end up with the cap assembly and the spindle in your hand as one unit. You'll notice there's a thin fiber gasket that makes the seal between the cap assembly and the valve body. Sometimes it stays with the cap assembly and sometimes it sticks to the valve body. Set that old gasket aside for now, but don't worry, a new one is included in the Symmons TA-9 washer kit. In general, it's a good practice to not throw anything away until you're completely done and everything is back together. You never know what you may need at a pinch if things go wrong. Before we get to that TA-9 kit, let's replace the T-16 cap washers first. They're inside the cap assembly, so we'll need to separate the spindle from the cap assembly to access them. Use the small adjustable wrench to loosen and remove the packing nut. That's the small nut that helps make the watertight seal around the spindle. You should be able to just use your hands to unscrew the spindle from the cap assembly. Set the old spindle aside. Now we can remove the 4 washers. And a good trick to do this is to use the smallest Allen wrench in your set to get them out. A pick set or a small flathead screwdriver will also work. It's important to note the order of the washers. The furthest in is the thin brass washer, then the O-ring, the thick brass washer, then finally the thick graphite packing. Once the old washers are out, we'll just take a look inside the recess and maybe clean it a little with a paper towel. Now let's open up our new genuine Symmons T16 washer kit and we'll install the new washers in reverse order. The thin brass washer first, then the O-ring. It helps to push it in with your finger until it sits flat. Next is the thicker brass washer, and finally that thick packing washer. With all 4 washers in place, we'll just thread the packing nut in loosely. We'll tighten that up later when we reassemble the valve. Now that the cap assembly and washers are done, let's move on to replacing the hot and cold washers on the spindle with the TA-9 kit. To get a good grip on the spindle, put the handle on temporarily and hold the spindle in one hand. Then, use the Phillips-head screwdriver to remove the stainless steel screw in the end of the spindle to remove that old hot washer. Now, use the pliers to gently grab the chrome retainer ring that holds the cold washer in place. Here's a little trick of the trade that works great if you're having trouble getting that ring to spin off. Just put the pliers on the far edge of the ring, away from the threads, and give it a little squeeze. That little squeeze will usually free up the threads enough to make the ring spin right off, and you can slide the old washer off. Now we're ready for new washers. In the TA-9 kit you'll find the large cold washer, the small hot washer, the cold washer retainer ring, the hot washer stainless steel screw, and a new cap gasket. The large cold washer just slides over the spindle. It's held on with the retainer ring. Just thread the ring on hand tight and give it a little snug with the pliers. The hot washer fits into the washer cap and is held in place with the stainless steel screw. That's it. We're ready to put the valve back together again. Remember that thin cap gasket we set aside earlier? Just place it over the spindle and seat it on the cap assembly. Hold it in place with the tips of your fingers as you hold the assembly. Before reassembling the valve, check the condition of the valve threads and take a look at the seats inside the valve body. Now, carefully thread the cap assembly back into the valve body by hand. Here's an old tip to help you thread it in correctly. Gently turn the assembly counterclockwise until you feel the threads drop together. Then spin it together by hand. It's kind of like cracking a safe. The assembly should spin in easily. If you feel any resistance, stop, check the threads, and try again. Once it spins in freely, use that big wrench again to tighten the cap assembly into the valve. Just make it tight. Don't use any excessive force, power tools, or superpowers. Once it's tight, put the handle back onto the spindle temporarily and turn it clockwise to close the valve. Then, use the small adjustable wrench to snug up that packing nut just a bit. Okay, the new spindle is in and we're ready to turn the water back on. You feeling lucky?
Well, do you, punk?
Slowly turn the hot and cold water back on and check for leaks. Turn the valve on and let it run. And cycle through the cold range and the hot range to test the temperature. Turn the valve off and check for leaks again. If everything looks good, reinstall the dome cover, the handle, and the escutcheon if you removed it. That's it, you're done. And remember, Symmons has a full suite of maintenance and repair videos to help you keep your Temtrol working like new. If you have any questions related to the maintenance of this or any Symmons product, just give our technical support team a call at 1-800-SYMMONS. On behalf of the entire team at Symmons, thanks and have a great day.